In the ending to the Reckoning, we see that our OG crew has returned. Takio, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Richthofen. They're back, and more than likely, they're going to be a playable crew in Black Ops 7 Zombies. And as exciting as that is, there's one humongous question. Who the hell are they? Because in the past, we had set versions of these characters. You had the Ultimus version of these characters, you had the Primis version of these characters, and maybe even 1.0 versions and stuff like that. But overall, we understood who they were. But this time around, we have no idea. Or maybe we do. And potentially, this image alone, from all the way back in Black Ops 3, might be giving us our answer of who these characters are. And I want to talk about that possibility because it is so freaking exciting. And for the people who know what that picture means, you may already know where I'm going with this, but let's hold our excitement back just for a little bit. And for now, I want you guys to go down there, drop a like, subscribe, bell, share, leave some comments and theories and anything like that that you would like down there. But with that said, let's talk about this new crew. Now here's the thing with this new versions of these characters, it can't just be a new version from a different multiverse. That seems very unlikely because the whole point of the ending to Tog der Toten was Nikolai collapsing the multiverse. Like, that was the thing he specifically said.
The multiverse must come to an end.
So unless the multiverse was just restarted when we weren't paying attention, I mean, I don't think that is very likely. So instead, this rather has to be a crew from the past, or a crew that has somehow existed in the background of this universe the whole time. And I'm going to talk about both of those possibilities, but mainly just one. And the one I want to talk about is that how this could actually be a crew from the past. But not in the way that you may think. Because initially when people think of this idea, they think that this is Ultimus or Primis. And I have a couple problems with this. One is that Ultimus died gruesomely in the ending to Tog der Toten, with an exception, but we'll get to that. And then Primis, they also died gruesomely at the end of Tog der Toten, with even more exceptions, and we'll get to that too. But my third and biggest problem with this new versions of this crew being just Ultimus or just Primis, I mean, just look at them. This can't just be all Primis, because literally right in the middle, we have Richthofen wearing Nazi uniform. I mean, that's what it is, and that's what Ultimus wore. That's more of Ultimus vibes. It's not Primis. But then on the other hand, if we look at Nikolai, he's literally one-to-one wearing everything and has the same facial hair as Primis Nikolai. So right there is that connection between Ultimus and Primis. But what is that connection from the past? Because this isn't the first time it's happened. In fact, because of this single alternate loading screen, this may be what Treyarch is building upon solely. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's actually understand how a possibility of a combination of a Primis Ultimus crew could even be formed. Because like I said, the two big problems with any of these character groups even existing is that they're all dead. And unless they just got brought back to life in some cheesy way, which is possible, but I have a little bit more faith it could be a lot cooler than that, then let's actually talk about this, because there is a possibility for them to all survive. Now, first things first, let's talk about Ultimus Richthofen. Now, Ultimus Richthofen surviving past the reset of Tog der Toten takes a little bit of a leap of faith, but I think is very possible, because if you guys remember when everyone drank the poison and all died, outside of Nikolai, because he didn't drink it, obviously, he later got shot supposedly, but Ultimus Richthofen was the only one that kind of survived. I mean, technically he died from drinking it, but then he became a zombified version of himself. This is actually for the second time this has happened, because this also happened in the ending to Buried, the canon version, of course. But later then we do see Nikolai shoot him, but this is the leap of faith I'm have to ask you to do with me. Let's question, what if Nikolai didn't finish off Ultimus Richthofen with this shot? And what if he's just been surviving in the Dark Ether all this time? Now the big question for that would then be like, how did he get back his regular human form? Because obviously we left him as zombie Richthofen. Now I think there's an answer to this, and that's the fact that we've seen zombie Richthofen become regular human Richthofen before in the past. So this isn't that crazy of an idea to happen again. And it could be an explanation for why Ultimus Richthofen can come back. But how about for the other three? How are they going to make their comeback? Well, let's think about it, because if we could assume for a second that the other three characters here are actually the Primis version of themselves, this could actually all make perfect sense. And to understand how this could work, we have to remind ourselves how the old Black Ops 3 cycle worked. And I made this graph literally 7 years ago, shout out to me for still having it saved, but this gives you an idea. It's not the greatest made graph, but it gives you an idea. So if you look at Origins, this is where it all starts. That's where all of our characters meet for the first time, at least those versions of them. And then they do the normal cycle that you see. Richtofen makes a stop in Shadows of Evil, and then they all meet up again in the Giants, and then they continue the cycle as you see here, all the way leading to Revelations. Now Revelations is where they should normally just stop existing, but instead, at the end of that cutscene, we actually see Monty decide to send our characters all the way back to the 1400s during medieval times. And this of course is where they fight the Great War. But this is when the cycle comes into play, because after this, I mean, I put here Primis dies, we don't actually know that, but regardless, time continues after this, because they were sent back in time to the 1400s, but you know what happens after the 1400s? 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, all the way to the 1900s, and this brings us back to the events of Origins. That's how the cycle worked. But then in Black Ops 4, this all changes. This is where the cycle's broken. And this is where it's going to get a little complicated here, but keep with me, because now I want to divide the Primis into two different sections, because there's two different versions of Primis existing at the same time, and we've seen this happen in Blood of the Dead. But what I'm going to call one of them is Cycle Broken Primis. And this version of Primis start things off as usual. They meet in Origins and go all the way to Zetsubo no Shima, but when they go to make their quick stop in Alcatraz, it doesn't end up to be quick. Instead, they get trapped there. And this of course is the events of Blood of the Dead. But by the end of these events of Blood of the Dead, we actually see something very, very fascinating. Cycle Broken Richtofen ends up sacrificing himself for the other ones can escape the Alcatraz pocket dimension. But you know what? He gets replaced. And he gets replaced by Great War Richtofen. And that is super significant because this is evidence that there is a past version of Primis existing at the same time as this current broken cycle Primis. Because there's literally a Great War Richtofen here. But where's the rest of his Great War Primis? Where's Great War Nikolai? Where's Great War Takeo? Where's Great War Dempsey? Where are they? Because we know Great War Richtofen just takes the place of Cycle Broken Richtofen and ends up dying in Tog der Toten, but what about the three other characters of Great War Primis? Where are they? Now you could just assume that maybe they just died in the 1400s and were left alone and Richtofen just went to do his own thing to keep himself in a cryo freezer forever. But what if that's not the case? What if they found a way to stay alive too and they're doing their own thing here? Then when Broken Cycle Primis ends up breaking the cycle in Tog der Toten, they are free from the cycle themselves, but they're still alive, all without Richtofen. Now they may be banished to the Dark Ether with all the other corruption, but guess who's also in the Dark Ether banished with them? The supposedly dead Ultimus zombie Richtofen. And I think that is exactly my theory. What if Great War Primis, missing a Richtofen, find Ultimus zombified Richtofen, and that's the crew that we're looking at today? And I mean, just look at them. I mean, if it's going to be any of them, that looks exactly like them. We have straight up Ultimus Richtofen, straight up Primis Nikolai, and then Takeo, if he looks like one, he looks like Primis Takeo to me. And then Dempsey, who kind of throws this a bit weird because he does look like Ultimus Dempsey more than Primis Dempsey. But hey, that's not really the point here. Everything else is working perfect. And oh my gosh, would this pay off something absolutely insane? Because the only reason I ever even thought of this theory was because I reminded myself of the alternate comic book loading screen. This one right here, one I've teased at throughout this video, because in this loading screen, we see exactly that. We see Primis Nikolai, Primis Dempsey, and Primis Takeo with Ultimus Richtofen, something that was teased at all the way back during Black Ops 3 that never got a payoff. But what if Treyarch is returning to that and they're finally paying off this loading screen after all these years? This isn't a new idea. This is something that Treyarch had planned in the past but never were able to use, and now this is their chance to do it. And I think it could finally all make sense for how we have an OG crew returning into this new Dark Ether timeline. But of course, this is just currently a theory. We don't know for sure. Maybe Treyarch is just going to say, hey, they're revived and we just redesigned their skins or something like this. Or maybe they forgot the multiverse was closed and this is just a new multiverse version of them. Or maybe someone just went to the Dark Ether and revived them straight up. I don't know. Regardless though, I think that if Treyarch really wanted to be fun here, this is how they would explain it. But we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless though, that's going to wrap it up for me, and as always, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on everything I talked about here. Is there something I missed? Am I making mistakes somewhere? Or do you think you add further onto this theory? Those are my favorite ones. But regardless though, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.